what he's trying to get is a new trade deal.
Right.
There's going to have to be some reordering of the global system. That is going to happen sooner or later, because the dollar is not going to remain the primary and only system which the world
throughout
operates.
this conversation, I've tried to pin you down on what that's going to look like, and you've rejected the idea of Nike opening sweatshops up in America, and you've rejected the idea of Japan buying more Californian rice or whatever. So what's it going to look like? I mean,
but these things aren't binary. It doesn't have. It's not. US is not moving to a system of self-sufficiency. On Nikes, I suspect they're just going to pay the tariff on them because it's still going to be cheaper with slave labor. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Nike discovers that they can put in some machinery into a factory in Kentucky, and they can automate the process. And with some deregulation, some tax advantage that will come through, plus the comparative cost now against the tariffs, it becomes viable to automate this and do it in Kentucky. I don't know, but my broader point is I don't really care, because that for me is not what is driving this. I don't think that Trump is doing all of this in order to reshore Nike production. I think it's for the reasons that I outlined. So
what's the point of saying all the other stuff just to give talking heads on Newsmax something to talk about?
Well, I'm not responsible for what they talk about. So I mean, they can frame this however they like. More than one thing is being hit here.
I see. Okay. Well, I mean, all I'm saying is that if all that other stuff is simply just noise, smoke and mirrors, Punch and Judy as per usual, then it doesn't come consequence free. Right, because the actual reaction to this around the world, both within America, outside of America, in the markets and so on, has been to say, no, this is actually like a fundamental change in the structure of production. So, it doesn't come cost free.
No, there were loads of costs associated with this. I mean, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who had a supply chain that included a whole bunch of Asian countries that are now going to be, have unviable businesses. So I mean, let's talk about businesses that I have sympathy for.
But then it's going to be Donald Trump. I voted for him, and now I've lost my job. I was a fool to believe him. Gavin Newsom, bring back America like we made it. Ronald Reagan, blah blah blah.
If that's what's going to happen. If that's what decides your vote, then what can you do? I mean, it's and on the point of the hysteria around, but I mean on the point about the hysteria around Donald Trump, you've got to remember that once he upended a box of fish food into a lake while he was stood next to Abbey, and the world went hysterical about that. I mean, the world is going to get hysterical about whatever it is that Trump does, and he needs to hit the points, the strategic, the currency.
I'm not talking about the world. I'm talking about the bloke who lost his business due to these actions, who's going to correctly blame Donald Trump for it, but go with the other side, who may have other ideas.
Well, what's your alternative though? I mean, you need an alternative to all the points on my list. If not tariffs, how would you have done it? And how would you have messaged it better?
So, I mean, you're basically assuming though that the US deep state wants to do this to save the military, right? Trump is just a front for that.
No,
basically
that's not my argument.
Basically what he's saying, though, isn't it?
No, it's not though.
Well, I don't know how else would so Donald Trump has unilaterally decided to try to save the vestiges of the American empire on behalf of the deep state, or the deep state's on board with this. It's either going to be one or the other, right?
No, I don't think you can simplify it to that. Donald
Why
Trump
not?
has wanted.
Why can't you simplify it to that?
Because it's wrong when you simplify it to that level. It loses so much resolution that it's no longer functional. Donald Trump has wanted tariffs for 30 or 40 years. He did some in his first term. They were significantly smaller than this, and they actually basically worked. He wanted more this time round. Now, what he probably would have found is that if he was the only supporter of it, then it would have been like, okay, Grandpa, you can do a bit of tariffs, and they would have applied it to some small element. What we've seen is that the rest of his team has enthusiastically got on board because they recognize that they can achieve what they want to achieve. So Scott Bessent has got on board because he understands that he can use this to achieve his goals, which he's been talking about for years, of a lower dollar and a need to restructure the global financial system, which is why he keeps bringing that up in every interview. So he's got on board for that reason. Trump was already on board because he just likes the name of them, or whatever it is, whatever reason it is that he's liked them for 30 years, that's the case. Scott Bessent comes on board for that. And then the military guys come on board because they look at it and they realize that their military supply chains are dependent on Russia. So they come on board for it as well. So once you've got all of these elements together, that's why they're doing it. And this is why it's multi-pronged, because it's trying to achieve different things. Trump wants to hit it because of the manufacturing aspect. Bessent wants to hit it because he wants to get the dollar down and he wants a global reordering. He wants a Bretton Woods 2.0. The military guys, they want it because of the strategic supply chain stuff. Now, you have to understand that there are three elements that are all driving this. And you can't say, okay, well, there's inconsistencies between one or the other, and therefore it does not hang together. No, there are inconsistencies because there are three different motivations, and they have come aligned around a policy that can achieve enough of what they want, and they can cohabit together. That's the disjoin that you're seeing.
But from what I heard from you, it's going to achieve some of what Bessent wants. It's going to achieve some of what the US deep state may want from the military point of view. But it's not going to achieve what Trump wants, which is the manufacturing bit. At no point did you, throughout this, have you addressed that?
Well, no, I have. I said I expect.
Go on.
Well, I'll address it now. So I expect some of it to be rolled back on, but then I don't actually know. We will find out over the coming months to what extent it is rolled back on. Madagascar, I expect that to be rolled because I just don't see why you wouldn't. EU, I think they will probably want to drive towards a zero tariff rate because actually that's better for the US because they will end up eating them if you lower that outer EU trade war, because the EU is so regulated up to the tits on everything that it basically can't move at this point. So it's not as simple as anything. But yeah, of those three legs of the stool, monetary, military, and industrial, my current assumption is that the monetary and the military are more likely to get more of the things that they want because they have to, because it's not optional, and that the manufacturing side will probably get less of what it wants. But I don't know, maybe Trump really holds the line and